Welcome back to the County Connections show for November. Again, I'm your host, Scott. This is Karn, Dan, and Thomas, your county commissioners. We're going to talk a little bit about election stuff. So Karn, as I promised, you get to now take the main part of the show.
Okay, elections. Thank you to all the voters who turned out and filled out your ballots. We heard this morning from Kathy Neal that most people actually brought their ballots in person, and they could be brought into the courthouse or to the clerks in all the towns. And the numbers are so hard here in Summit County because we have so many people on the rolls as registered voters who then move away and are still on as active voters when they really aren't. So it's hard to get the real numbers, but we know at least a third of you all voted, and we think it's probably more like 45%, which is good for an election like this.
Off-year election.
An off-year election. There's no president on the ballot or anything. But I always like to talk to people about how important these elections are, because these kinds of measures really impact you locally and make a difference that you can see in your life right away, versus the big elections that filter down with some impacts. But these are really important elections. So we had great turnout, and we had the most definitive outcomes that anyone can remember, with results of yes on all the measures, anywhere from 75% yes to 89% yes. So that's really exciting to have clear outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. And my daughter, who turned 18 in July, got to vote for the first time, and so I sent her ballot that came to our address and sent it off to school, and I said, if you need any help filling out your ballot, let me know. And so then she told me she just wanted to know, do I need one stamp or two?
Oh.
And I said, I put two in there just in case, so put two on.
Yeah.
And I said, what about questions about any of the questions? No, I researched them all myself and answered them all and did it all on my own. So that was great. So she took advantage of her opportunity to vote for the first time. So that was great. All right. So Karn, back to you with regards to one of those questions that had the overwhelming support of the general public, and that was the Senate Bill 152 override, or telecommunications override question.
Which was 1A. The county questions on the ballot are usually 1As, so we have a lot of 1As through the year. And this one was seen in quite a number of municipalities and counties around the state, and all of them passed.
Yeah.
I don't know if they passed as well as ours, but they all passed with big majorities, like 70 to 90%.
Yep.
And this was really, in many ways, a simple cleanup from a bill that passed in 2005, which restricted governments from getting involved in any way, shape, or form with any telecom services.
Unless we asked the voters.
We asked the voters to be opted out. So the voters said yes. And the big telecom companies are really kind of backing away from their stance previously. They were afraid of governments getting involved, but they were afraid of governments getting involved in taking over big cities where the big profits are. And they really have not been able to follow through and serve the rural areas. So it's the rural areas that had this on the ballot. And so we hope that now we will have the ability, and we're researching the best options to move forward, to provide first better cell service, which is the bottom line, most important missing communications that we have in the lower blue. And in other parts of the county, we have people coming from all over the world with their multiple devices and expecting to be able to download materials like they do at home. And that jams up our services, especially in a big blizzard. So we have a lot of issues, and we would love to have the telecoms just come in and fix it, but clearly that's not happening. So we're looking at some public-private partnership and the ability to just move forward with various funding options. There's some grant funding options and some private funding options that we can help facilitate.
I mean, the most important thing with this is if we didn't have this voter approval, we couldn't even take the first step on an opportunity that may come along. So pretty obvious that the first step was to go ahead and do this. And yeah, I think it was 14 different counties all asked this question this year, and they passed in all
And another-
14 different counties.
Another 26 or so municipalities.
Right. So,
It helps to not have opposition, of course, and the
Right.
telecommunication companies, they're really, I think, protecting their turf back in the day, and realize that they have a huge uphill challenge to fight this when communities like ours
Right.
are really working hard to solve this problem.
well, and it's very quickly not a luxury, but a necessity. And we're realizing that just in that 10-year period, this has gone from something that, oh, this would be nice to have in your county to, ooh, we can't do without this.
Yeah.
So,
And that Brush Creek fire is the example. October 1st, there were people in that area trying to move livestock out of the way of the fire, even firefighters who can have some radio connection, but a cell phone is a lot easier to communicate with the person down in the field below you.
Yeah, there were definitely some challenges associated with cell coverage out there during that event. The command post or the incident center was located at sort of the edge of Silverthorne, as opposed to being out on site because of the challenges associated with cell phone communication and trying to get out to the outside world with internet resources and different things like that. So on scene, we've got an infrastructure, a radio infrastructure. Going back to the ballot question again, Thomas, that you mentioned earlier, related to 911 and ambulance.
Yeah.
We've got a radio system infrastructure for public safety, but that doesn't allow that cellular communication necessarily. So hopefully with this, we're able to spur some level of development in some of those areas, and then see how that might expand as well, and provide the opportunity for us to continue to stay with higher speed, higher capacity lines within the community in general as well, because we're not at the level right now that Denver is at. The Front Range has speed and capacity capabilities that we don't have here.
and we're
within Summit
certainly
County.
well behind the rest of the world.
Yeah, definitely.
Painfully behind there.
Yep. All right, and then there was another big ballot question that passed overwhelmingly that the county was a big supporter of. So Thomas or Dan, you want to talk about the housing question?
Yeah, so that was 5A, and 5A passed by 76%. 5A asked voters to renew the funding that was originally approved back in the fall of 2006 for workforce housing. Summit County and the 5 towns, because it's Breckenridge, Frisco, Dillon, Silverthorne, and the town of Montezuma are all part of the combined housing authority. This is a sales and use tax that is coupled with a fee on new development, and it funds workforce housing in Summit County. And we took advantage and became the first multi-jurisdictional housing authority in Colorado using some legislation that was passed back in the early 2000s. We went to the voters this fall and asked them to renew that funding. And so thank you to everybody that voted yes on that. That was overwhelming approval to continue that funding. There's a lot of different projects that are out there that we've pursued in the last 10 years, actual construction of projects as well as land acquisitions that we couldn't have gotten done without the 5A funding, and we're going to continue to see more of that. That's the good news, that's going to keep going. The other thing, though, that we were careful to mention to everybody during this process is that 5A funding does not get the job done completely. And whether you're looking at the town of Frisco or the town of Breckenridge or projects that we have, like Lake Hill that's ahead of us, we all understand that the 5A funding isn't enough to get everything done that we need to in the future. So that was the thing that we were, I think, pretty transparent with people about. You know, we want you to vote yes for this, but we also need to admit to you that we're going to need more funding in order to get workforce housing done in the future. But each jurisdiction gets its fair share of the sales tax. A portion of that is used to support the housing authority, which does a lot in terms of helping people understand how to become a home buyer. It does all the monitoring of the deed restricted units to make sure that they're used the right way. It supports that office. the fee on new development can only be used to build workforce housing. It can't be used for anything other than actual construction or land purchases. And so we'll continue to keep going with the 5A funding and everything that we're doing with that.
Yeah, it is surprising, number one, the amount of housing that is required to really meet the demands, and it's only getting more, especially as some of the rental inventory seems to be drying up as it's being used in more of a vacation rental scenario than a long-term lease or long-term rental. And the infrastructure associated with some of these big projects is substantial. And so you end up with what is a relatively large subsidy that needs to go into a project in order to maintain it as an affordable project. And so you're right. I mean, certainly this is a big component and a huge help, and helps to keep some of those projects moving forward. But some of these large scale projects that are on the horizon are going to be significant cost burdens.
Right.
Okay. All right. We will take a quick break, and we'll be back shortly.